red-crested korhaan's suicide dance or mating dance means they will take off and fly vertically up in the air and get to a certain point and literally close their wings and plummet to the ground, and opening their wings just before impact with the ground. And obviously the male who can open his wings closest to the ground wins the competition and wins the hearts of all the korhaan ladies abound. And obviously there is a couple of reasons for this apart from the obvious that we would think. And so obviously in the bush here it can be quite thick, so it could be quite difficult for the korhaans to find each other. And so by a male having that very visible aerial display, it will give a chance for females to actually spot and know where the males are. And they haven't quite started it yet. I have heard some of the preemptive calling for it, but I haven't seen any bombs falling from the sky just yet. And off he disappears. As I was saying, we're part of the vast 3.5 million hectare Greater Kruger or Greater Limpopo Greater Kruger Transfrontier Park, and that's probably just under 7 million acres of unfenced African wilderness. We are in a tiny little corner of it, almost central and then far western corner of this great park, and we are on the private reserves that have dropped their fences with the national parks, so the animals are able to migrate freely between them. Unfortunately we are not, but rather them having that option enables really good genetics and animals to sort of follow natural migration patterns. So a very special place, a very special part of the world that we are privileged enough to call home. But just to let you know, as I said, we're coming towards the end of our winter months and heating up nicely, and also the sun is starting to rise a little bit earlier and go down a little bit later. So what this means is from Friday we are going to be changing our times slightly, and we will, now this is I'm not the best when it comes to Eastern Standard Time, but I'll give you our local time. We will be leaving now at 6 a.m. from Friday morning, so tomorrow will still be the same, but it'll be from 6 a.m. Central African Time to 9 a.m. Central African Time, and then again in the evenings we're going to be moving half an hour later, so we're going to be going out at 3:30 a.m. 30 p.m. So just keep that in mind. Oh, hello. Have some Nyala. Please. It's always good to stop and listen. So now while we've got these Nyala next to us, I'm trying to figure out where that breeding herd of elephants that was at the Djuma Dam Cam has gone. So there's probably a few more Nyala that we can't see. They do live in little family groups, very loose herd structures, very little hierarchy in them, and also non-territorial species. So the males do not fight over territory, they only fight over females that are in estrus. And next we have the ones we have visual here of, and there's a sub-adult following mom who's up in front. Still no sign of those elephants. But fortunately we have some magic that appears sometimes out of nowhere in my ear. So for those in the States, I think on the, I'm trying to remember, it's East Coast or West Coast. But it will be, depending on the East Coast or West Coast, it'll be from 12 dedicated hardcore Safari Live followers, and other than that it'll be from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. So I know you guys saw a dead honey badger with James on the Sunrise Safari. I couldn't resist while out in tracking team. I had to find out exactly where it is so I could go and inspect it myself. And we are going to have a quick swing past there. I've got a feeling the battaliers might have eaten a bit more of it, so we definitely will go have a look at that and see how that carcass is deconstructed. Hopefully a hyena doesn't wander off with it. I've got a feeling, strangely enough, I've seen quite a few dead honey badgers out in the bush, and I've never found one eaten by anything apart from some predatory birds. So not even a hyena seems to eat a honey badger. Speaking of predatory birds, we'll stop just up ahead. I'm not going to tell you what this one is just yet. I'm going to see if you guys can identify it for me. He doesn't fly before Andrew gets in there. There we go. A very interesting bird, and we have seen them quite a few times on the live safaris. A very specialized bird. It's able to dislocate its joints in its legs, enabling it to reach into holes in trees and take out the nests of other birds as well as little reptiles that might live in those holes. So I wonder if you guys can tell me which bird this is, and you can do that by sending your answers through on email to questions@wildearth.tv, or you can use the hashtag SafariLive if you're on Twitter. Just going to hang around here for a little bit to see if this bird starts feeding and moving through this marula tree, checking the crevices. It is quite warm. It might just be resting in the shade for now. You can see that bare skin on its face. It's one of the diagnostic features of this bird of prey. Quite often, if they head into an area where there's a large bird party, they will be mobbed by all the smaller birds, and they are a very big threat, not to the adult birds, but to their nests and young and eggs. So guys, let's see who can figure out who that is. And it doesn't look like too much hunting behavior going on, or just resting in the shade. So remember, those of you who might have missed it, if you know what that bird is, send your answers through to questions@wildearth.tv or use the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. And I know some of you regular viewers have definitely seen that bird with Scott showing some of that really, really interesting hunting behavior. Quite far from that honey badger carcass, but I am still getting a rancid whiff over the air. And this is another area where it looked to me when I walked between our camps today and I saw the elephants down at the dam. They did look like they were heading in this area, but if we don't get any lucky, I will start heading my way back towards the water and see if I can find the tracks and start from there. Andrew, I know how much Andrew loves following birds in flight. So Andrew, I'm going to say be prepared. We might have some bateleurs come off the ground, off that honey badger carcass, which is very strong smelling from here. Woo. No, the bateleurs are not there. Go have a look if they've opened up any more of the carcass. How's that, Chicos?
I think it'll work.
Okay. Well, one thing you need out here in the African bush is a strong stomach. Lots of smelly things out here that a lot of people might find quite gross. And I remember being told as a youngster, I can see Andrew's holding his nose in great disgust at the moment, but breathe through your mouth. And I remember thinking, well, is that better to taste it or to smell it? But you do get used to these types of smells and you are able to deal with them after a while. So we can see a lot of the skin has actually been pulled off. So I'm pretty sure that could have been from the bateleurs during the day. And they have definitely eaten a little bit more around the head, around the eyes and nose. How close are we getting in there? Can you see the maggots in the nose there, Andrew?
Just the flies.
Yeah, well, there's tiny little maggots inside and flies' eggs there. So this could be quite interesting. As the hair pulls, it might actually give us a better idea of what might have happened here. And we've all been speculating. I personally think it might have been a lion or a leopard. But with a honey badger, it's really difficult to see puncture marks because they've got such a thick layer of skin. I know James has gone with snake, if I remember correctly. Myself, I'm not convinced. But we will keep looking. So as the hair pulls off like this, if there are any distinct puncture marks, we are going to be able to see them. Anyway, shame. We'll leave him be. Let him continue giving back to the wilderness in terms of nutrients. And it's amazing how a dead carcass or carcass of an animal becomes its own little mini ecosystem in itself, with so many different specialized species feeding off that little carcass. Where is he? I can hear it back there. Oh no, African hawk eagle calling. There we go. pair of African hawk eagles. We saw them show that incredible hunting behavior yesterday. Where they were chasing what was still to be, or will continue to be, an unidentified bird at Sydney's waterhole. So interestingly enough, the African hawk eagle, which is not the bird that was in the tree, but it has two of the same words in its name. And I'm sure there's quite a few of you who've got it right by now. Just get around, back to the road. Donna was the first in with the answer, a gymnogene, and so was RC and Stephanie from Switzerland. So well done, guys. Also, Stephanie would like to know how it got its name, the gymnogene. So it does have two different names. One is a gymnogene. The other, which is more frequently used these days, is an African harrier hawk. And I'm not 100% sure how it got its name, the gymnogene. I'm not sure. Maybe James knows, so I'll give him a call on the radio quickly, see if he does know that. James. James, do you have any idea why a gymnogene was originally called a gymnogene? Copy, not a problem. I'll check when we get home. James also has absolutely not a clue, but he has offered to Google it for me quickly. So I said, not worry. Why don't you guys see if you can Google it for me and see if you can find out where a gymnogene got the name gymnogene. So while we continue to search for these ellies, we're going to cross across to Scotty so he can bid you a good afternoon and he can let you know his plans for the sunset safari.
Mark on me because it's the first.
Hey.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome on board with myself, Scott, and I'm teamed up with Bryan. As you can see, there are some around, but they've just moved out of frame as you came across to us. I'm just going to creep forward a few meters. Let's see if we can't get you some better views. They're incredibly pretty antelope. Looks like it's just going to be a glimpse of them for today. This is a youngster we're looking at, and now that she's with the adults, you can see she's considerably smaller, so probably born somewhere around this time last year. It's a very, very hot afternoon, and when we found them, they were just resting up in the shade of this little bush on our right, and I think a lot of the animals for the time being are either going to be drinking at the water holes or seeking refuge in the shade. And just as well, we have decided to change the game drive times, half an hour later in the afternoon and half an hour earlier in the morning, and that is starting on Friday. I'm not sure if Brent's mentioned that to you already, but I'm really looking forward to that because this afternoon it is a little bit hot to be out there, or out here rather. Here goes another female. The males are dark chocolate brown, so very easy to distinguish, but that's only when they are fully grown. Young males will look much like a female. And Stephanie in Switzerland has stumped all three of us, James, Brent and myself. I also don't know why a gymnogene was called that before its name changed to the African harrier hawk. And it is going to be interesting to find that out, so look forward to getting to the bottom of that. Now, there was a report of some elephants coming to the Gallagher waterhole, which is a small waterhole just over to our right there. But as you can see, nobody is home. So we will continue down towards the Gallagher Dam. I'm not sure who or when the report came from, but it was worth coming here anyway, because there could have been anything having a drink there, and we still could bump into anything along the way to the next waterhole. James has headed into the area where I left Sindila, a young male leopard, this morning. He is still on his own. He hasn't seen his mother for about 6 days, but it appears that he did successfully make a kill of a substantial size last night. We found his tracks dragging some kind of a carcass across the road, and we're not sure exactly what it was. It could have been stolen by hyenas, but I'm sure he did manage to feed on it, at least for a little bit, because his stomach does look fairly content. By no means in any danger of starving, even though his mother has been gone for so long. And James is out on tracking team, so hopefully he's going to get over the radio and give us the good news shortly. Failing that, we will head into the area as well to lend a hand. Shadow's going to have to come back at some stage, and it'll be wonderful to see both his and her reaction when they do, but the only way of finding that out and seeing that is by being there. So we may spend quite a lot of time with him this afternoon if he is found. I know this morning we spent about 2 hours with him. Huge thanks to RC in the Netherlands, as well as Maggie in Australia, because you guys have already given us information about why gymnogenes are called that, and in Latin it means bare chin. So thank you very much, and that makes all perfect sense now. And the reports about the elephants was correct. Look at this. Just 2 so far. They both look to be like young bulls. And what you'll notice is that their coats are looking quite dark and moist, and on this hot day they've taken the time to have a mud bath covering almost their entire body in a cool layer of mud. So the elephant's giving you guys a confirmation of exactly how warm it is. It's been a while since I've seen them mud bath, and we will continue to see them mud bathing and even swimming with just their trunks sticking out of the water like periscopes in the summer months. And I'm told a lot of you got to see them taking their mud bath. I've just got that report now and managed to capture quite a few screenshots of that, and I'm jealous I missed out. It's always great entertainment watching them toss the mud around, and also the way they churn it up with their feet to create the mud of the correct consistency for the job. And if any of you may be watching your first live safari this afternoon, it's important that we share some information with you regarding the waterhole cameras that people were watching when they managed to capture these screenshots. And there's one here on Juma, which is operated 24 hours a day by people around the world. Well, I've just seen some more elephants pop across into view, and it's a cow and a calf. Cow's disappeared into some very thick bush above this youngster. And as I was saying, there's also another waterhole camera at Arathusa, and they provide us with great information thanks to you guys, and also some great sightings are shared amongst the viewers of those channels or of those cams. There goes the mum. Sure if there are still more elephants on their way, and how big the herd was that some of you did get to see. And we'll just stay with these guys for now then, and if any more come through, which they could well, we will then make another plan. Like this young bull's getting a little bit excited, the one on the left. No different to an adolescent human. The young boys can be a little bit mischievous and playful. And quite often will charge up to the vehicles trying to show you how big and mean they are. Let's see if he doesn't come and show us who's boss. Hello, boy. No. We got lucky this time. Interesting comments just come through from Cecilia saying that these elephants are looking a bit bony and skinny. And it is going to be the hardest time of the year for them from now on until about November, when the first rains will begin to rejuvenate the vegetation here. So they will be looking skinnier than normal, but certainly not to any point that we should be concerned. And these guys will be just fine. It has simply been a tougher year than normal due to the fact that we didn't get as much rain as normal during our last rainy season. But it's not dire drought conditions, and there's still food around. They just have to search for it. A little bit harder than normal. Well, we're going to try and reposition the vehicle to get you some better views of these elephants, and in the meantime we will send you across to Brent to see what he's found for you.
Welcome back, everyone. We've headed back towards the Gowrie waterhole to see if we could find where those elephants have gone. It seems like Scotty's found them, but we did find some of the giraffe that were there earlier. So we're just going to move a bit forward. I can see a male giraffe ahead, and he's looking intently in that direction. And I know with Scotty, you've managed to find shadow like that, but quite often when they're looking intently, it's not only sort of cheetah and leopard, it could be another giraffe that they're looking at. So let's see what he is looking at so intently. What are you looking at, big boy? Looks like whatever he was looking at, he's either lost interest in or can't see, and he's moving to get into a better position to see. Nice big giraffe bull. So Gowrie bushes are often not a tree you'll see giraffe or anything eating quite frequently, but in the dry season they will occasionally feed off them. Still interested in something up to the left. From the tracks I saw a little bit earlier, I think it's looking at another giraffe, possibly another male giraffe, which could be some competition. Or it could be looking for a lady. And obviously, one of the advantages of being so tall is they do have very good eyesight and they're able to see quite a long distance. But it's lost interest in whatever it's seeing. Well, let's just go have a quick squiz up there, just in case. You never know, it might be a leopard, or even better, a cheetah. But we'll go have a quick look, and if nothing, we'll come back to this beautiful big boy who's having a bit of a feed. A quick look around here. Andrew, can you spot anything yet? Negative. Look down into the drainage line. Aha! The culprit has been spotted. Let's go see if it's a boy or a girl. But right up ahead, there's another giraffe, and I think that's almost definitely what that other giraffe was staring very intently towards. Have a look unfortunately, signal does get quite bad here, so I'm just going to stop up on this little crest, and it's a young male. So you'll probably find that he's going to try avoid that much darker, bigger bodied adult male. So there we go. Let's have a look. And he's eating off a bush willow. So there's a young male giraffe. Happens to be in one of the strange little spots that seems to be inhabited by gremlins. So quite a lot of our herbaceous species, so herbivores, things that eat grass and trees and plants, are non-territorial to a degree. And Dave Toronto was wondering if any of them, apart from obviously the predators and carnivores, were non-territorial. Well, Dave, interestingly enough, giraffe, as we have here, also live in sort of loose family groups and harems, and they do move through areas, and they are sort of non-territorial, and they will generally only fight over females when in estrus. But the most and the biggest and most prominent sort of very territorial herbivore that we get here in the Sabi Sands is one, unfortunately, we don't show you. It is rhino, and they are highly territorial. Males will defend their territories vigorously against other males. For those of you wondering why we don't show rhino, there is currently a poaching issue with rhino in the whole of Africa, and being live, we don't think any of our viewers are actually watching to see if they can find out where the rhinos are, but just in case that the bad elements of society did happen to find out we were showing rhino and we are live, it might put those animals at risk. So we don't show rhino, even though they are here, but they are highly territorial, and they do defend territories against other rhinos, and that's probably the most territorial of the non-carnivore species that we get here. Also steenbokkies, little steenbok, are also territorial, and they also vigorously defend a very small territory against other steenbok. I'm going to try to think offhand. Hippo are territorial in the water and have very narrow territories leading from the water, but mostly territorial in the water, protecting good areas of water so they can have lots of ladies with them so they can mate. So like Buffelshoek waterhole, not the greatest waterhole at the moment, so you often find possibly that bachelor Bob, the young hippo bull, who is not ready to claim one of these prime territories, and he sort of hangs out there sometimes. And I'm just trying to think offhand. I think those for now, but if I do remember any others, I definitely will let you know. I think we're gonna leave this guy and we're gonna head back to the other guy. Hopefully he hasn't meandered off too far. From one of the tallest animals in the bush,
Welcome back, everyone, and so happy to hear that Brent found some giraffe. I know a lot of you have been asking to see them, but there are not many around at the moment, so that's great. And thankfully these elephants have popped out of the thicker vegetation and are just feeding on the side of the road. This one's certainly in the best view. There's another one up off to the right. The cow and calf, I'm not sure where they've disappeared to, so it's just the two bulls that we can see now. And as I said earlier, at this time of the year they'll have to be resourceful in looking for food, and he's apparently moving this fallen down tree to access plants that haven't been fed on, that are growing underneath. Watch closely here. They're growing underneath this tree. And it's a great story here, because it would have been another elephant that broke down this tree possibly a couple of years ago, And this fallen down tree has created a little micro habitat which allows new trees and new growth to grow. Obviously this elephant now is about to undo that, but it is a good example of how their destruction can lead to helping future growth. Interestingly enough, earlier I know Brent was mentioning that it's unlikely for animals to feed on the bright green bushes that you can see all in the background to the left of this elephant, and they're all Gowrie bushes. But from time to time, when they are desperate, like now, because it's very dry, they will feed on a few, and this individual here did have a few mouthfuls of Gowrie earlier, and it's only the second time I remember seeing elephant feeding on Gowrie bushes. The first time was about a week or two ago, and that was on a tracking drive with Stefan, and even with all his experience and time in the bush, it was also the first time he ever got to see an elephant eating the very bitter and distasteful Gowrie plants. You may have noticed how he used his trunk and his tusks there together to break this root, which he's now going to chew the barky layer off and then discard the rest. If you watch closely, he'll in all likelihood drop this piece out the right hand corner of his mouth. There we go. Did it drop, or is it still there? I think he may have dropped it just behind his trunk, so he couldn't see it clearly, but he won't consume that whole piece of branch. So earlier he used his tusk and his trunk, now he's using his trunk and his foot to try and get his next meal. And the majority of time spent watching elephants, you will see them feeding. They need to feed on an incredibly large amount of vegetation every day. The experts say about 4% of their total body weight needs to be acquired daily. And I would say this guy's about 3 tons, maybe 4. So anywhere from 120 to 160 kilograms of vegetation needs to be consumed every single day. A big bull could consume as much as 250 to 300. Looks like mid-feeding he found a small dusty patch there, which he may continue to work and increase in size with his foot and then throw over his moist, damp coat. He has been swimming a little bit earlier, which some of you got to see. And it's common for elephants to not only mud bath, but also dust bath. The cool, sandy dust will help coat and cover his hot skin. Well, for those of you who did get to see them mud bathing earlier, I'm not sure whether it was down at the, I'm guessing it probably was at the original Vulture dam, which is now drying up, and probably not at the clearer, fresher water that is being pumped into a little pond nearby. And Jennifer in Idaho has just asked us whether we do pump water into waterholes around the reserve during the dry season. And yes, in the Sabi Sands that is done. And most landowners will pump water into these small ponds during the dry season. Not all of them. So there certainly is more than enough water than there normally would be. But some of you may then ask the question, well, aren't we then interfering with nature by doing that? And yes, of course, the answer to that is yes, we are impacting on what would naturally be happening here. But what is also important to say is that because the Kruger National Park has got fences around most sides of it, it needs to be controlled and managed. So there does need to be a hint of human interaction and management of land, and that's a whole new topic of discussion. But I'm glad you did ask the question, and I just thought I would let you know very roughly that it is important to know that there are fences around the Kruger National Park, even though it is about 3 million hectares large, so it's very natural and just about a perfect ecosystem. But because there are fences preventing animals going where they used to be able to go, the need for management is necessary in certain areas. Now this, I think, is simply him displaying his strength to us. He seemed a little bit playful earlier. Okay, I just had a very interesting update on the radio. I just need to find out where Brent is. There's just people chatting on the radio, which is going to make it tricky, so I'm going to have to wait for my turn, so bear with me please, but I do need to get a hold of Brent very quickly. Brent needs to, if he is in the area, get to Philemon's cut line and Rebecca's junction as soon as possible, and that's the message I want to give him. I've just heard a report on the radio saying that Shadow has crossed north over Gowrie Main, heading towards the area where Sindile was left. And James actually has found Sindile. He was lying in exactly the same place. Okay, well, false alarm. The report of Shadow crossing in was incorrect, and one of the guides saw the same drag mark that we saw this morning, where Sindile had dragged a kill across the road. And that guide thought it was tracks of a female leopard, which is forgivable because his tracks and his mother's tracks do look very similar. So hard to differentiate between a young male and a female. But the good news, Brent is heading into the area anyway, and hopefully he will be with Sindile shortly. Just got a comment through from Ginny asking if this elephant has an injury on his head. And not that I've seen, Ginny, but I'm going to try and get closer again now and we'll take a closer look. A lot of the time you guys are seeing things a lot better than we are seeing them right here. Bryan's got a tiny little monitor on the camera that he sees the picture with. It's about that big, so it's difficult for him to see very clearly, and I've got a tiny monitor below me here, also not very big and often covered in a fine film of dust. So please point out all these little things that you see to us and share your observations, because it often leads to great things for us to know about. Just like this morning, one of the viewers pointed out that Sindile had a very faint smudge of blood above his right eye, and it was only after that update that I got to see exactly what she was talking about. So keep sending those through, and let's see if we can see any injury here now. Look at him displaying for us, aren't you big and strong? We're not going to come any closer, it's far too scary. I I sadly didn't get to see that. As I raised my binoculars, I didn't notice any injuries, but like I said, I didn't get a very, very good look there. Stephanie in Switzerland, hello and welcome on board. Stephanie's asked a question that I do not know the answer to, but I'm going to let you all know about it because it's an interesting one, and hopefully Brent or James may know a little bit more about this than me. Stephanie's noticed that the elephants in an area called Etosha, which is not in South Africa, it's north of us, a very dry area, beautiful game viewing area. The elephants are quite bigger there, quite a lot bigger, but their tusks aren't as big or tend to snap off more than the South African elephants. And I'm guessing possibly it could be just long-term genetics in that area that cause them to be bigger, and I'm not sure what it is that would cause their tusks to be smaller. You do get some areas where elephants are almost completely tuskless, and again that would just be genetics mainly that have caused that, but I don't know too much about that, Stephanie, and I'm sure Brent will maybe have some more insight into that topic for you. What I do know as well on that though is that most of the great tuskers, the largest elephants, the biggest tusks, have originated from East Africa, Kenya and Tanzania and surroundings. So that's typically where the biggest ivory in the world has come from, in the biggest numbers. Whereas in South Africa, not nearly as much, even hundreds of years ago before they were heavily persecuted for the ivory trade. There are still a handful of massive tuskers whose tusks touch the ground here in the Kruger National Park, and it really is special when you do get to see them. I'm not sure why, very seldom do big elephant bulls come into the Sabi Sands. There's certainly enough food here, water and ladies, so I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just bad luck on my behalf, but I've very seldom seen or even heard of big elephants being seen here. But further north into the Kruger National Park, the sightings of them become more frequent. It's still very hot and still, and I'm hoping that's going to change later on as it cools down. And the birds are hardly even calling at the moment. There was one fork-tailed drongo that let off a call earlier, but other than that, the bush is very still and peaceful. Well, the first horsefly of the season just landed on me and bit me, and there's going to be a lot more of that coming as the summer approaches. And I really am looking forward to all the creepy crawlies and insect life that we can look forward to seeing, because there are some really interesting little bugs, spiders and creepy crawlies that we can show you, as well as reptiles and birds and flowers. There's going to be huge changes in the safari experience from now up until November and December, which will be the peak of the summer. You may notice a small black bird following the elephant. It'll probably fly into screen shortly. And here it comes, watch closely. There it goes, 2 of them now. And they're hoping to hawk the insects that the elephant chase up. It's a very nice breeze that's all of a sudden started blowing over us from the north. And you'll notice the leaves dancing in the wind. That's going to cool things down a bit, which is what we want. Because the more comfortable the animals are, the better for us. And that's applicable for all of them. When it's very hot, they tend to seek refuge. Well, interestingly enough, not so long ago, James had a sighting with a female elephant, and this is a female we are looking at, and if you look at her belly, it's a little bit extended at the bottom in front of her front leg, and James pointed this out, and it looks like it could be a hernia of sorts. And when he was viewing her, she looked quite uncomfortable and in a bad mood, so he decided to actually leave the sighting because she was causing a little bit of concern for him. And that certainly is possible, could be the same elephant. And what's interesting to note from this is that, yes, her anger and discomfort may have been caused from that hernia, but it was only noticeable with James a few days ago, whereas now she seems completely relaxed. And that's what's so important to remember with wild animals. Their mood on a daily level will change, just like ours as humans. You must never forget that when on safari, because you can quickly get yourself into trouble if you don't treat each animal each day by its body language and behavior. Even if you think you know the animal well, it's always best to err on the side of caution. So just to update you, I think Brent has aborted his initial plan to go over to Sandile. There's quite a few other vehicles there at the moment because the Game Drive channel wasn't working on Juma this morning, and thankfully is now. Nobody got to see Leopard except for you and us on Safari Live, and they're all trying to show their guests now. So there's a lot of people that we're allowing in there in front of us, and also keeping an eye on the situation, because if any action does unfold, they'll be sure to let us know, and then we can rush in there. But for now, like I said, because it is so hot, Sandile is probably going to be fast asleep, and it would be better for us to spend a little bit more time with these Ellies before continuing on to him. And Brent's plan therefore now is to drive up our western boundary with Sibambili and double check a report that the Nkuhuma Pride did cross east into Vuyatela, into Juma. It was a tricky one because I checked that boundary 5 minutes before finding Sandile, and when I'd moved out the area, one of the guides said he did find tracks crossing there, and I'm concerned he got confused with some older tracks, because I did see some tracks, but they were not fresh. So Brent's just going back there to double check. Maybe the lions had crossed a few minutes after I had driven down the road. That's always a possibility, although slight. There is always a chance. And it's been quite some time now that we've got to spend some quality time with lions, especially the Nkuhuma Pride. Well, Curious One, thank you very much. You've made a very good point relating to Ginny's observation earlier, saying that she thought she saw a small wound on the head of one of the elephants. And sadly, that elephant is nowhere to be seen now. But Curious One pointed out that it could have been some mud caked on the forehead, which may have looked like a little wound, but it was just a clump of sand, potentially. So that's something to think about. And Ginny, if you did get some screenshots, then you'd be able to take a closer look now and see if it wasn't in fact mud. So thanks, Curious One. Good points. Well, we got an observation earlier from one of the viewers saying that the elephants are looking skinny, and now another one from Bryan also saying that she thinks they're looking a bit thin. And I must say, I don't want to disagree with you, but I personally don't feel that they are looking abnormally thin or dangerously thin. Their spine is often visible, and shoulder blades, even at the most plentiful times of the year. That's not to say that they certainly may not be as chunky as normal, but I personally haven't noticed a major difference in their condition from summer to now. But then again, you guys, like I said earlier, are getting often better views than we are. Zoomed in with Bryan's handiwork on the camera. So maybe you guys are right and I simply haven't been keeping a close enough eye on them. So I'm going to keep a close eye on this female. Like I said earlier, she is the one with the hernia, and it's very evident now as she walks past on her underbelly. You can see an extra bump protruding there, but her body language is indicating to me that despite that problem she's got going on there, she is completely relaxed this afternoon. Brent's just calling me on the radio. Hopefully he's got some good news, so let me just have a quick word with him. Excuse me. Go ahead, Brent. Okay, copy. Good luck. Bryan, look at her tail. It looks like a giant dreadlock. Let's take a closer look at this. I've just noticed this could be a Rastafarian elephant. Oh, you know what it is? It's the mud that's caked all of her tail hairs together, creating quite a fancy hairdo. Well, even the elephants here tend to take care of their hairstyles. And there's a cute little elephant bull, probably just over a year of age, probably more than that, actually taking a second look now. So somewhere around a year and a half to 2 would be my guess. And like most young elephants will do for the first few years of their life, they will always be just a few meters away from their mother, and he's hot on her trail. Apologies, I forgot to update you on what Brent discussed with me earlier. He said he has now found some tracks that do appear to be on top of both my tracks and his tracks from when we searched there this morning. So it could have been that those lion, just a few moments after we were there, came onto Juma. The catch is where they crossed is also very close to the boundary with Buffalo's Hook, our northern neighbors, and therefore they may have ducked onto a property where we cannot go. But Brent's a great tracker and very determined, so I think we've got a good scout there searching for all of us, and I've just heard another report from Brent saying that it looks like the tracks crossed back west into Sibambili. So that's the end of that debacle for now. Sorry to get everyone's hopes up, but that is a reality of being on safari. The amount of times where I've even been racing to a sighting with guests, a confirmed sighting of either lion or leopard, and you tell them we're going, hold on tight, and a moment before you get there the animals will disappear into an area where you cannot go, and then you have to try and backpedal and console everyone's disappointment. Well, I'm gonna leave this next decision up to all of you, so please send through your thoughts as to whether we should stay with these elephants or head over to young Sindile, a male leopard which has been found. He is asleep, but if we take our time and enjoy the drive there, it would probably take about 15 or 20 minutes, and we don't know what we may see along the way. And from about that stage of the afternoon, I think it will be starting to get cool enough for him to become more active. So let me know, do we stay with the elephants or do we go to the leopard? Well, the young bulls that are in this herd are still not quite ready to be kicked out of the herd, but anywhere from 12 to 16 years of age they will be kindly asked to leave the herd, and I guess it may also be their own decision, wanting to head off in search of new beginnings. And Dee in Michigan is interested to know, when will elephant bulls first come into must, which is a sexually heightened stage that elephants can come into for 2 weeks to 2 months, once or twice a year depending on the individual. There's no set pattern for must, and it will depend on the individual. And I personally haven't seen younger elephant bulls doing it. I'd say the youngest bulls I've seen in must would probably be at around 20 years of age, and it's usually the much bigger bulls that you see in must. Maybe must periods or must levels increase as they get bigger and bolder, and it might be less noticeable when they're young. Still occurring, but less noticeable. But like I say, the youngest bulls I've seen, and it's always a guess when you're guessing their age, would be around 20 years of age. And I've been hearing a few new names sending through questions this afternoon. Dee, you're one of them, and it's always wonderful hearing new names. Not that we're getting bored of the regular viewers, of course, but it is nice to know that more people are joining in and making the most of this wonderful safari experience. young bull has noticed that the calf in front's a little bit nervous because it's moved a bit of away from its mother, and now the big brother's gently urging it on, telling it not to worry about anything. It was just an ever so slight increase in its speed that you may have noticed, and then the bigger bull behind gently pushed it forward with its trunk, saying, go on, nothing to worry about. At least that's my analysis of what happened. I love the way they walk like cowboys. They kick their knees out to the side. It's something that I think Andrew or VM may have pointed out to me the other day, and it is so true. Tracy, Donna, and the majority of everyone that did send through their votes regarding what we should do next have said off to Sindila, the young male leopard. And if that wasn't what you're hoping for, apologies, but you obviously didn't get your vote in time. And what I want to do is just get you one last view of all these elephants that appear to be walking up the road, and then you can get the cowboy leg shuffle as they go, and then we will turn around and head south towards the leopard. Well, one of the collective nouns that can be used for elephants is a parade of elephants, and I think even though it's a small one, this is a very good opportunity to use that noun. What a beautiful sight. Well, my prediction of D in Michigan being a new name and a new viewer on WildEarth Safari Live is completely wrong. Apologies, D. She's been watching since inception, so she probably knows more than I do about Safari Live. So good to know you're watching, and you got to send through more questions so we know you're around. And even if it's not a question that you want to know, what I personally love is comments. When you let us know what you're enjoying, what you're not enjoying, less of the time ideally that, and observations. So not only questions, but just how you're feeling, how the weather's doing in your country, or anything really, just to chat about. Well, thanks very much to whoever did send through updates about those elephants who were seen on the Juma waterhole camera again, because if that wasn't for you, we wouldn't have spent the last hour or so with them. Earlier on we saw some female Nyala, and I mentioned that the males are a darker chocolate brown. This is a young male. His horns will probably get 1.5 times longer than that. But just like the female, similar vertical white stripes across their body. And glad we got you a glimpse of that, but we are going to continue now. we're gonna start increasing the speed a little bit to get you to Sindile, and we don't want to bump you around on that speedy journey, so we're gonna send you over onto Brent's vehicle for a slow cruise. Enjoy.
Welcome back, everyone. Andrew and I are traversing the far western corner of Arathusa. Not an area we get to too often, although I keep saying that, but I have been here once in the last couple of days, and we are going to head towards where that vulture nest is, so we can see if we can get a better view of the baby as it gets a bit cooler and the adult possibly returns from a day out foraging. So I know you've been having a wonderful time with Scott and those Eddies, and Stephanie from Switzerland asked whether the elephants here were bigger, whether the elephants in Etosha in Namibia were bigger than here, and she thinks that they are. Well, Stephanie, I might have to beg to disagree with you there. As far as I know, and I've read quite extensively on this, that currently the largest bodied in terms of physical sized and tusked elephants in Africa are in South Africa and in an area called Tembe Elephant Reserve, which is in northern Zululand, near where I spent part of my childhood. And they have had some incredible tuskers. They also had the largest tusker alive up until recently, whose name was Isilo, who passed away. Isilo is quite a strange name for a big bull elephant. It is from Zulu culture. And, oh, hello, Impalas. Let's carry on. And Isilo is actually the name, one of the praise names given to the king of the Zulus. The king of the Zulu at the moment is a man by the name of King Goodwill Zwelithini. And he is the king of the Zulus. And this is an old praise name for Zulu kings. It has been used for many, many years, I mean probably hundreds of years. And Isilo refers to a big black-maned lion. So I think whoever named that elephant was a little bit confused with their Zulu culture. It is a praise name for the Zulu king, but it refers to a big black-maned male lion as opposed to a big bull elephant. And so Stephanie, as far as I know with current research, that is the largest bodied elephants in Africa, followed closely by the elephants in the Lowveld, in the Kruger, and that would be these elephants. We unfortunately don't seem to see that many really big bulls around here at the moment. They might come specifically during marula season, and when I first started we did see quite a few bulls, and I think Andrew and Bryan and myself have had fantastic sightings of very big musk bulls. We do have a lot of breeding herds, and when those elephants aren't in must, they're going to spend a lot of their time trying to avoid all the commotion of the breeding herd. But there could be some historic reference to Etosha having monstrous elephants. The largest elephant ever recorded, and you guys are going to have to go double check the exact figures for me, because I can't remember exactly. And that was apparently shot by a hunter in southern Angola and in the late 1800s, and that was said to be sort of 9 tons, if my brain serves me correct, and that could be, I think, as far as I know, the largest bodied elephant ever recorded ever in Africa. And that before the civil wars in Angola and stuff, there would have been very much a natural migration between Angola and northern Namibia. I'm not sure whether it has gone as far as Etosha, but it is possible. So if someone can have a double check on that for me. The largest, heaviest elephant ever recorded in Africa was from southern Angola, if my memory serves me correctly, and it was about 9 tons in weight. Also, Stephanie, it's quite a common thing that happens. It happens with giraffe as well, and I have fallen victim to it myself. I remember as a young boy when we moved from northern Zululand to Botswana, I remember saying to my dad, but sure, Dad, the giraffe in that particular area of Botswana, in right up on the northern boundary with Namibia on the Kondo River, things like that. But sure, these giraffe look shorter than the giraffe we used to see in Zululand. And my dad said, no, you're just looking at it incorrectly. And I've noticed this even more so when you go into desert areas. And Etosha, being a very arid area, would fall into one of these categories. So the giraffe in Kondo looked shorter to me because the trees were bigger. So the jackalberries and torchwoods and that were huge there along the river. And the giraffe just seemed smaller. And whereas Zululand, it's a very, outside of the sand forest, it's very uniform, very sort of short bush, quite similar to this. So the giraffe is quite often taller than the majority of the trees around. And I noticed specifically when I went down and spent quite a lot of time in the Makhombo salt pans and central Kalahari, that the giraffes, and when you do see an elephant there, they look massive because the bushes are so much shorter. And it's a little trick the human eye plays. And I mean, I've fallen for it a couple of times. You're sort of driving through the central Kalahari and you just look at this giraffe and it's about 3 times the size of the tree it's feeding off. And you think, wow, that's a tall giraffe. And then once you sort of put into context the size of the trees and bushes around, it makes a little bit more sense. Well, thanks very much for that, Stephanie. That's really interesting, and hopefully someone does manage to find a bit more information on that elephant from Angola. And we have a kudu crossing in front of us here. Sorry guys, Andrew's blowing the dust off the lens there. So apart from having a good look at the kudu as they move off onto the crest, heading west towards the setting sun, it's a good chance to just stop and listen. I know there were some tracks of a leopard in this area this morning, so it might be moving, so just stop and listen for alarm calls. And speaking of alarm calls, kudu are one of the best animals if you hear their alarm calls. Impalas sometimes get a little bit confused by smells and things, but when you hear a kudu barking, they generally don't cry wolf, so they've definitely seen a predator. We're going to carry on down this road. We're heading towards the Marikini drainage. So guys, Scott was on his way to young Sandile, but he's got distracted by something quite interesting, so we're going to cross over to him so he can show you exactly what that is.
Welcome back, and Bryan just couldn't resist showing you that buffalo with its tail curled up into a croissant. And we're here at the Djuma waterhole, where a few buffalo bulls were taking a drink in a mud wallow, and I couldn't help but stop on the way to Sandile. Look at all the fish in this remaining little puddle of water. These are all catfish that we can see. And this is the first time that I think you'll be able to get a better idea of their size, because a lot of their bodies are protruding out the water. You can at least get an idea of how long they are, and it's probably, most of the ones we're seeing here are about 3 feet in length, possibly even some a bit bigger than that. And these are too big to be fed on by most birds, especially the storks that need to swallow their prey whole. A fish eagle, I guess, could latch onto one of these and pull it out the water. It would be very difficult, if not impossible, to fly with such heavy prey, but at least it would then be able to kill it and feed on it on the edge of the water. But other animals that you may see trying to catch these catfish as this pond becomes drier are leopards. So that's something that hopefully the Djuma Hall water cam will alert us to in the coming months as it becomes drier. But we'll wait for that call and leave these fish to continue battling it out. Thankfully for them, they don't have to worry. Even if it does completely dry out, what they can do is squirm their way into the mud, and their bodies have got a very thick layer of mucus which will keep them moist, and their lungs can process oxygen just like ours, so they often breathe fresh air in out of the water, and they can stay alive in these mucus capsules until the next rains come along. I'm happy to hear that Brent had a bit more insights onto the elephants of Arathusa and that discussion, because I've never been there, so I don't know too much about them. I noticed the zebra just before we went down to the water's edge. He hasn't moved an inch and doesn't look particularly happy at the moment. Although that could be interpreted differently, I guess, depending on where you're looking. He's covered in oxpeckers, as you can see. Now, what I thought I saw earlier was a scar where his stripes don't meet up as they should. But it's actually just the way he was born. You see those stripes on the center of his belly, which you can just see ever so faintly. I'm using a little stick to try and get you into that central area of his body. And sometimes when zebra are attacked by a lion, their skin is sliced open by the claws, and where the stripes grow back, they don't match up equally. Looking very similar to what we get here, what we can see here, but it's not the case. So he doesn't have a lion war story, as I thought he may have. Let's continue. There are a few more just up ahead of us on the road that we can take a look at, and maybe one of them will bear those scars of a lion attack. No, they all look scar-free and scratch-free. Look at the two little foals taking time to groom one another in front of us. Awesome! Best friends. Look at this. Too cute. Look at their tiny little hooves. And the one on the right's so fluffy. You can actually hear them. Hello. Now, one thing I want to ask you to look at, even now, even though these two foals aren't very close to the adults, even though they are considerably shorter than them, their bellies and legs are the same height off the ground. The base of their belly, watch as this foal approaches her mother. Even though she's shorter, her belly is the same height off the ground. Now, this can be quite useful for zebra, because when lion or other predators are looking into the herd and all of this dazzling camouflage that they have, it can be difficult and confusing to distinguish young or weak individuals, especially in this case young and small individuals, from the adults. And this is a great view we have of that now. And on the right, Bryan, I've just noticed that one zebra does have evidence of a lion attack. If you zoom into that back right leg there, Bryan, you'll all clearly notice the scar and where the stripes don't meet up as they should, ever so slightly in this case, but it does give you an idea of what I was talking about earlier. Understandably, it must be quite painful for the lion that gets two flying hooves bucking back into its stomach and head. I've heard stories of a male leopard called the camp pan male who I got to view in the beginning of my guiding career, and to the south of us here. And he tried to attack a zebra, and he got kicked in the head, and he was actually knocked out cold, sleep tight, unconscious. And after a few minutes he woke up, shook his head, and obviously tried to piece together the puzzle of what had just happened to him. And I'm sure every now and then, I'm sure a lion has probably also been knocked out. Now, the individual zebra that we were looking at earlier is still standing quite uncomfortably, looking in the same place, or at least unhappy. And Gowrie pointed out that it looked like the flesh and meat just above the hooves looked very swollen on that individual. And I also noticed that as well, but didn't say anything, Gowrie. So thanks for confirming that for me. And let's take a closer look at him now. I think he's, or it's just old. I'm not sure if it is a male or a female. Oh, of course, we do know it was a male. We did see that. Apologies. But his hooves certainly do look quite swollen, and it's maybe just something to do with age. I'm not sure what else it could be. Look at all these oxpeckers. That's also a sign that maybe he isn't in the best condition, and that's why his parasite load is very high, and that's why maybe so many of these oxpeckers are enjoying feeding on him. Wouldn't it be nice to know, Gowrie? I personally think it's something to do with age. Big old boy, keeping an eye on his harem. Well, we've just got a funny comment through from Kristen on Twitter, and she said, are zebra black with white stripes or white with black stripes? Well, Kristen, that all depends on your mood, and you can decide that as you please. I personally believe that they are white with black stripes, but that's just me, and everyone will have a varying opinion on that. The call you're hearing now is clearly coming from these red-billed oxpeckers, which are busy plucking the parasites off the zebra. And it's a very, very useful sound to remember when in the bush, especially when on walking safaris. If you hear that noise, it could warn you that not only is there a zebra, which is no major threat to us, but buffalo and rhino are two dangerous animals that oxpeckers love to sit on and feed on. And that's why it can be very useful to pay heed to their calls and approach those areas with caution, as you never know what exactly they are going to be sitting on and feeding on. Wonderful. Well, great that we've got to spend some time with not only the zebra this afternoon, but also some giraffe. Two animals that are not very, very numerous in the Sabi Sands, at least not right now at the moment. Their numbers do fluctuate, but it's not an area that's renowned for zebra and giraffe viewing. So I'm glad we've managed to see that this afternoon, amongst other things already. And we've still got some time ahead of us, and who knows what's going to happen next. Hopefully we're going to be with Sindila in about 5 to 10 minutes, but you never know what you're going to bump into along the way. And as we left the elephants, I couldn't resist stopping to show you the catfish, and that led to the zebra. And I guess you also got a glimpse of that buffalo initially as well. So Brent has headed back to a nest that he has showed you once before, and a little fledgling. So enjoy this, and we will see you all a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. And you can see we've made our way back to this vulture's nest that I've been checking on for quite a while now, and I'm hoping the little one will pop its head up. He did a couple of minutes ago, so we're just going to sit here patiently. There's also leopard tracks in the area, so perfect time to sit and listen as well. One of these days we're going to time our arrival here to perfection, and we might get the chick begging for a regurgitation. There are quite a few vultures' nests in the area. This one, however, is the easiest one to view. Almost like a statue above there. And vultures are a really, really important species in the ecosystem, and very, actually a huge part in controlling disease. And if you remove a bird like a vulture from the ecosystem, you can get outbreaks of different diseases and all sorts. They have an incredibly strong stomach and are able to deal with bacteria and stuff that a lot of animals can't. So they are quite threatened, all species of vultures, and quite often from poisoning, and this is due to something that's not very nice, but it's the muti trade. For those of you who don't know what muti is sort of traditional medicine, and there are some very strange ones, as with all traditional medicines around the world. And if you eat the vulture's eyes in a stew or in a soup, you're able to see into the future. And obviously this comes from the belief, because vultures can spot carcasses at such distance, they can see so well, they can see all the way to tomorrow. Unfortunately, these days we don't really find vultures outside of the major conservation areas. Although I know last time we were here, we spoke about the vulture study group, and they do a lot of work at trying to conserve vultures. And specifically at the moment in South Africa, the two most threatened vulture species. Oh, there we go. Did you just see that little head pop up there? There we go. So I think, having seen baby vultures close at hand before, I'm afraid they're not very cute, and they look like very scrawny, scraggly versions of the adults. And I think this adult has probably already regurgitated to the youngster. As I said, one of these days we're going to arrive at the exact right time, and we might be able to witness a feeding. And as they get older, even if we miss the feeding itself, we'll probably get to see some begging. So we'll definitely keep checking on this and the other nests. I really like coming to this nest because it's the only nest we can really actually see into. As you see, a nice long knob thorn. Really difficult for a potential predator to get in there. Lots of hooked thorns, and the only real potential predators for a baby vulture would be snakes and possibly monitor lizards, but not in a nest like that. I don't think a monitor lizard would be able to climb up there, and even for most snakes it would be quite challenging with all those thorns. So a really good, safe place. And interesting enough, with white-backed vultures, almost all of them will always nest in one species of tree, and that is a knobthorn. And it's possibly because they often have that really long shape and that really big thorny defenses, and they will choose knobthorns like this one with one sort of single trunk, as opposed to some of those really big knobthorns with multiple trunks. It's a nice platform to build their nest on. Their nest is made up of various sticks and thorn branches and that. The inside will be lined with feathers, so probably very comfy for that little baby. And during the heat of the day while the adults are away, they'll probably burrow into that. And I don't know, those of you who might have been watching last time, I mentioned that with Cape vultures, the vulture study group have a specialist little team that go around and climb up trees like that, wearing protective clothing, but that never works with thorns, and using climbing equipment to actually, sometimes they will remove, or they count eggs, and so otherwise also sometimes they will remove one of the eggs. And the reason for this is, like with most predatory birds, they practice Cain and Abel syndrome, or siblicide. So the first out of the egg will kill the second. Let's have another closer look there quickly. So we've been discussing how vultures are under threat, and Sandy from Denver would like to know, what is the biggest threat to vultures? Apart from the sort of traditional medicine trade, Sandy, it's definitely loss of habitat and loss of carrion. So if you think about a commercial farming operation, you don't have that much carrion that dies. So they have to move very large distances to find any carcasses to feed off. And also also not a very nice practice, but was practiced for a very long time in South Africa, is commercial farmers, specifically with cattle or sheep or goats, if it was killed by a predator like a leopard or hyena, they would poison the carcass. This is obviously illegal and very much frowned upon, and comes with hefty fines and prosecution if someone is caught doing that. But the populations took their hits, probably from really big hits from the sort of 50s onwards. Now there has been a bit of an increase in certain of the vulture species, white-backed, and I think Cape are making a little bit of a comeback. But that sort of commercial farming and poisoning of carcasses to try poison predators also ends up poisoning vultures and other birds like tawny eagles and basileas. And a lot of these birds you will only find now inside large conservation areas like we are now. But I think we're going to leave that still as a statue vulture and move on, and hopefully we'll be finding something else. There were some male leopard tracks that were heading down towards the drainage line, so I'm going to loop ahead and see if those tracks come out. I've got a sneaky suspicion they might be the same tracks James is following, and I'm just starting 10 steps behind, but I am listening to the radio. Ooh. Do you hear that, Andrew? Oh, foxed by a windmill. I can just see the windmill through there, and I just heard the sort of that click, click, and it almost sounded like a possible Nyala or bushbuck alarm call. But let's continue on. Now we got to be careful as we go under here. I think Andrew was the cameraman with me last time, where we nearly got a bomb dropped on us. So I'm trying to see where Andrew is, so I'm going to try to put him in the line of fire and keep myself out of it. And speed up. And we're through. Safely, without any bombs. that vulture's nest, and just give you a quick view of that funny noise I heard that made me stop there. And you can see there's a bit of a breeze. There's an old windmill. Doesn't pump water anymore, but it's still there. Pretty well oiled for something that old. But our Ocean from Oregon was wondering what type of feathers a vulture's nest is lined with. Well, with vulture feathers, of course, but it'll be the soft under feathers, so probably very much like a down from the underbelly and that, and obviously that would be the main nice soft lining for those young vultures. So guys, I might lose signal as I dip through this drop, or might have a little bit of breakup, so bear with me. I'll try and move through it as quickly as possible. Okay, so it looks like we managed to sneak through there without any problems. We're going to keep working our way along this little drainage line to see what else we can find, and hopefully those leopard tracks do come out of that large block. Quite a few of my favorite little guys scurrying around here. Just trying to go see where the best spot to see them is from. I think it might be just that way. On the right hand side of this little mound, there. So I just saw a little dwarf mongoose disappear down that hole. I'm going to try get him to come out for you guys again. Not being so cooperative. Let's just wait a few seconds. There's some others scurrying around behind Andrew. A little russet bush below there. There we go. Going out into the open to the right. Coming towards us. There we go. Little dwarf mongoose. And we're heading towards their evening home at the moment. This guy's popping his head out. There we go. So from the smallest carnivore to a surprise carnivore. Oh, sorry guys. Gremlins crept in, but no, we're going to disappear off to Scott now, and we'll be back a little later. Welcome back everyone, and as you can see, Bryan and I are off-roading at the moment in the hope that we can find you a glimpse of a leopard. We don't know which one it is. It's a young male, and he was last seen heading out of this area off to the right of us,
And what he may have done is headed down to the water's edge for a drink. Just making sure he hasn't already slunk past further away. Where has he gone? So it's not Sindile. We changed the plan as soon as I heard that a young male leopard had been found, because I was hoping it could be Kunyuma. We had Buffels Hook Dam, and I know Kunyuma does like to spend time here. I can see his tail curled up in this very thick bush in front of us. And just give us a moment or two, we're going to have to ramp over this little log. There we go. I'm going to try and go slowly as possible because he's very close to us here. I don't want to scare him. Take a look at this, how awesome. And I don't have a clue who this leopard is. Neither does Nikki in the final control. And who knows, maybe it's a young male. Oh, look at that scar on his back. Is that not the scar that Quarantine got? Did you see that? Now, I haven't seen Quarantine since he was wounded. He got into a fight, we're not sure with what exactly, and he got a wound in what I'm told is a very similar position to that, but apparently it's definitely not Quarantine. Well, at least you got a glimpse, and any of our leopard ID experts, please help. Who could it be? Definitely a young male, but who exactly, I don't know. Oh, sorry, Bryan. Now look closely, even through the twigs you can see on his right rump there's some fur missing. So a little injury there. And when cats do fight with one another, that's often an area where they'll try and bite and attack because you can paralyze your opponent. There it is. A lot clearer to see now. And I would guess that he's probably close to 2 years in age. Obviously each male will vary in size. You wouldn't believe there's about 40 buffalo off to our right, and I think they've just caught wind of him. Look at them all looking in his direction and grunting. They'll chase leopard if they feel the need, but I think in this situation he doesn't have anything to worry about. These big old boys are probably not going to waste their time. Look at that. Wonderful. What a bonus. Buffalo and leopard in the same sighting. And we've just got a guess through from Rosie saying that she thinks it could be a male called Makhombo. And I forget the name of his mother, who occurs to the north of us in Buffels Hook. But I remember, I think, Kanyeni and Kanyeni's son. And that is who I was going to guess. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get on the radio. I've just heard Yorks, one of the landowners from Buffels Hook, is here. And it's one of his favorite leopards. So let me just do that quickly, and if it is him, he'll definitely be able to help us with that ID. does have a very, very dark face, dark gold coloration. So that's something that I've noticed. He doesn't seem as pale as Kunyuma or Quarantine. Here he comes, in that little gap there, Bryan. Just going to roll forward a tiny bit. Oh no, let's just wait here. There you can see him walking below us in the riverbed. Okay, well, we've got another confirmation from Raisa, who is one of our leopard ID experts. And Raisa agrees that it is Makhombo in Kanyeni's son. I've only seen him once before with his sister on a rainy day in the summer months earlier on this year. I just want to get on the radio quickly and let yours know. Yours, just to let you know, this looks like Makhombo. And his response to me was, "That's great news." And he's very close and rushing in along here. You can see the leopard's very intently sniffing. I'm just going to try and roll forward a tiny bit, Bryan. See if we can't get you into clearing. There we go, that's a bit better. And look at him, he's doing the Fleming grimace. So you would have seen him baring his fangs there. And it's not to look sinister, it's to open up a special organ that helps him better to process smell. I hope he does it again, he might. Keep watching closely, and in all likelihood another leopard has been here doing this exact same thing, sniffing and then leaving his scent behind. And I'm sure young Makhombo here will do the same thing. I'm not too sure how old he is now, but there's the Fleming grimace. Look at that, looks like he's smiling. But he's not smiling, he's smelling better, which is hard to believe but true. And his father, I'm told, is Mvula, who's a dominant male leopard who we're seeing less of because Tingana is pushing Mvula further east and north away from us into surrounding properties. But still just interesting for you to know where he comes from. It looks like he may be licking his wound now, keeping that free of dirt and pests. And the brief look I got at it, I certainly don't think there's any cause for concern. It's a very minor wound as far as these animals go. They're incredibly tough and resilient. So don't be alarmed from that little wound. Interestingly enough, Nikki and I came out on tracking team yesterday afternoon looking for animals, and I want to ask Bryan to zoom out because we drove around to exactly where Craig's vehicle is, which you'll see in the distance from the other side of Buffelshoek Dam. And where this leopard is lying, it's a kind of hidden cove that you cannot see. You see how you cannot see any of the dam from where he's lying. And there you can see Craig's vehicle. We came around that corner and didn't find a leopard lying underneath. But imagine what a pleasant surprise it would have been had it have been this afternoon, because he would have come around the corner to find young Makhombo lying under this fallen down tree. And like I said, I only saw him once. He was with his sister, whose name I forget. I think it could be Shiluva. Okay. And we had one brief sighting of them in the rain, and I don't think they've ever been seen by any other WildEarth presenters. So this could very well be only the second time that we filmed them since we started here in November last year. I'm wondering whether we should possibly relocate and drop down into the riverbed where Craig is, or rather wait for him to get up and start moving again. Because it is quite a tricky area to negotiate in, and if he does continue north, we would be in a very good spot to continue following him. Well, thanks very much. One of you has just confirmed that it is Shiluva. And that was Patricia, so thank you very much, Patricia. And thankfully we did wait here. And sorry, it's not Patricia, it was Petra who sent through that update. What a beautiful sight. I really do love seeing leopards walking in riverbeds. I don't know what it is about them or what it is about it, but it's one of my favorite places to view them. And thankfully we're in a good spot now to try and continue getting glimpses of him as he meanders his way up the riverbed. And I'm sure a lot of you haven't ever heard of this leopard. We've hardly ever seen him, as I've just said. And Charlie is one of those people. He would like to know, where is this leopard's territory usually? And it's further north of here in Buffelshoek, where not his territory, but more importantly, his mother's territory occurs. There you can see him lying there. We will reposition again once you got a glimpse of this. But Charlie, like I said, in Kanyeni, his mother mainly spends time in Buffelshoek. I've never actually seen her, and I'm not sure how many times she has been seen on Safari Live. So he would have been kicked out in all likelihood by her. She would no longer be looking after him, and now he is going to start spreading further and further afield, hopefully onto Djuma, and we'll get to know him a lot better. But for a young male like this, that I'm guessing is around 2 years of age, possibly just over, and that's just a guess, he will be self-sufficient now, but not dominant. He won't be territorial. He'll have kind of a hangout, you can say, but he's not going to be competing with other male leopards just yet. It's probably another 2 or 3 years before he's big enough and bold enough to do that. Too close to him, even though he does seem quite relaxed. I'm not sure if he's used to these vehicles, and they are slightly different to the other game viewing vehicles, so I just want to give him a little bit of time to get used to the slightly different shape. Absolutely beautiful. A flawless young male leopard. They start to look a little bit more rough and rugged as they become bigger and older. But isn't he absolutely beautiful? And I really do love his face. It's dark. He's got very dark rings around his eyes, and even a very golden dark tan to his face. Look at him flicking his tail like that. Shame, I think that wound could be frustrating him. As I said though, it's nothing for us to be concerned about. It's a small flesh wound and probably just a little bit aggravating for him. Well, got a question through from Shari, interested to know if he could possibly mate with Shadow or Karula. And yes, it certainly could turn out that way in years to come, but it's going to be 2 or 3 years before he even thinks about trying to get lucky with the ladies. I think there's a fairly good opportunity for Bryan to zoom in on his wound now, which we can see quite clearly. Just a fairly large patch of skin missing there. Maybe he got nipped by a hyena or another male leopard. But as you can see, it's clean, not very deep, and therefore nothing for us to be concerned about just yet. And another interesting question's come through, asking whether or not this young leopard would pose a threat to Shadow's cub. And yes, he is bigger and therefore more powerful and would quite easily worry or quite easily beat Sindile in a fight, but because he is still flying below the radar, I don't think he's going to be looking for fights just yet. And it would more likely be a big dominant male leopard that would kill a youngster like Sindile. And that question came through from James in Kansas City.
Well, you know, I mean, again, he's at that age when he can evade lions by climbing a tree. But, yeah, you know, that's a bigger male would have definitely put him in his place.
Oh, well, thanks for the update from Safari, saying that he has been seen more than just the one time with myself, and I'm told he was seen with a few scratches on him after a fight. But that must have been with another presenter while I was on leave. So a handful of times he's been seen. Not many though. And isn't he just an absolute beauty? I think he's relaxed with us a little bit. He's coming right up past our vehicle, so that's a good sign. Now he's looking fairly hungry, nothing too serious, but very good prospects for hopefully seeing some stalking and stealth from him a little bit later. It's been quite some time since I've seen a leopard provide us with a decent hunt, and maybe young Makhombo here is about to change that. Well, is it Isn't this wonderful stuff? A new leopard and such a quality sighting of him. Just going to stop here because it looks like his body language is indicating that he may have seen something. Sorry, Bryan, I dropped up Bryan in the deep end there, but you may have just got to see the tail, a glimpse of the tail moving off through the bush. But he did stop and listen and look quite intently, and I just wanted to show you that body language because there may be some potential prey up ahead. Squeeze tight, everybody. Lean to the left. There we go. Off now, and it's an absolutely wonderful evening. The breeze that came through earlier has subsided, but this is my favorite time of the bush in the afternoon. First thing in the morning and last thing in the evening, twilight in the evening, sunset are my two favorite times out here. I must say a big thank you to Jennifer for sending through her question, because she's queried my comment from earlier when I said he's not even going to think about mating for the next 2 or 3 years, and she queried me asking whether will he not think about it or will he not be able to do it. And I lost my train of thought there, Jennifer. Apologies for that. But basically, it's not that he won't be thinking about it like a young teenager, like most young teenagers would, but he won't actually be capable of it or in a likely scenario to acquire a female in season. Just going to creep forward a meter or so. Just like Sindile, he still has a pink nose that may blacken with age, but there's no guarantee it will. And you do get some large males with pink noses. But for now, that is another good ID characteristic that we can use. I wonder if there aren't some warthog that live in this burrow. And I have seen young male leopards spend countless hours waiting for warthog to exit their burrows. And it is often a fairly easy prey item for them to focus on. I'm going to creep forward another meter or two. Well, as I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, what does Makhombo mean? And Khada asked that question I'm not entirely sure, but thanks so much to Jason for doing some research for us, and he says that according to Facebook, it means trouble. So he must have been a naughty little cub. Doesn't seem that way now, but maybe he'll pleasantly surprise us. This is absolutely wonderful, and we'll probably have about 5 more minutes with him if he continues at this pace. He's heading directly north towards Buffalo's Hook, where we cannot follow him. But he could bump into anything between here and there and hopefully show us his hunting capabilities. Can't see any prey up ahead, but he is continuing parallel to the vehicle. I'm just trying to loop ahead of him and stop and allow him to walk past us, and it looks like we're going to have a great spot to do that in. Just up ahead here. Not sure which pathway he's going to take just yet, so give me a moment. We'll give him a moment to make up his mind, which he has done. And he's kind of coming in our general direction, but what I might do is just roll forward a few meters, and that way get you a better view of him approaching us. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to get on the radio quickly and update everyone on his movements so that anyone nearby may be able to join in. It was a tricky area to negotiate earlier in vehicles, so now that he's approaching a slightly better area, guys might come in and rejoin. Stations updates on this young Madoda Ingwe at Buffalo's Hook. He's going to probably cross the fire break north of the dam into Buffalo's Hook in the next 2 or 3 minutes. Well, earlier I spoke about the bush being quiet, but now you can hear a lot more bird song. Well, I tried to take a closer look at his spot pattern earlier, but to be honest, I was just enjoying his sheer beauty and didn't manage to work out exactly what his spot pattern is. So I'm sorry, Maria. I only thought to do that too late when he got up on the move. But I'm wondering if Raisa or anybody else managed to work out that spot pattern. Basically, for those of you who don't know what a spot pattern is, what you need to do is, when you can, look at the black spotted lines where the whiskers protrude out of. And just above that, between the whiskers and the top of the snout, you often have a few clearly individual freckles or tiny little spots. And each leopard may potentially have different ones, a 2, 3, or 3, 3, 3, 4. I've seen 2 vehicles parked up to our left, and I wonder what they're viewing. So I'm going to get onto the radio quickly. Yours, what have you guys got there? He nearly caught a little Franklin. Check this out. He missed it. The Franklin's just in the tree right above him. It's a crested Franklin that flew up. And as I was looking at the... Oh, there goes another one that he went for. Go ahead, yours. Yes, affirmative. He's just about to pop into the clearing here on the fire break. Okay, copy. Come further east. He's in this little drainage, about to pop out. So yours and another vehicle were just standing by next to us, waiting for him to come out into the open. So they hadn't seen anything. And wasn't that great to see him go for that Franklin? It was a crested Franklin he was going for. And he's laid down. In this perfect open clearing for us. You can still hear the crested Franklin's alarm calling. And I hear there's a big discussion on Twitter mentioning how lucky we are in the Sabi Sands because of the incredible leopard sightings that occur here. And it really is true. It's certainly one of the best leopard viewing destinations, not only in South Africa, but in Africa as a whole. Your chances of seeing multiple and good quality leopard sightings are just about better here than anywhere else. I may be a little bit biased, there are other good spots. Thanks Mari for reminding me again to check for the spot pattern. Now, oh, it looks like a bit of a confusing one. He's got clearly 4, possibly 5 on his right hand side of his muzzle. And a whole bunch on his left as well. He's got quite unique spot patterns. It's going to be easy to ID him from them. The tricky thing is some of the spots are joined, so whether you count them as 1 spot or 2 spot, I guess if it's joined it is 1 spot. And Mari, I sadly couldn't work out exactly what the spot pattern was there. It was a slightly confusing one, not an easy one. Sometimes they have 3 clear spots, or 2 or 3 that are easy to distinguish from each side. But his are a little bit more tricky to work out, but that in itself makes it unique and, like I said earlier, a little bit easy to use as a spot pattern ID. Thankfully, the other vehicles have now joined us in this sighting, so they are also going to get to enjoy this wonderful, wonderful leopard. And because they have all just arrived, I'm just going to give them a moment or two. We have had some really, really good views so far, so it's fair that we share this sighting with them, and I'm sure it's going to be these guys who call us into the next great sighting we go to. So we've got to have a little bit of karma here and give them a moment. We drove off the cliff here. My heart skipped a few beats. So it looks like we are going to have just one more glimpse of him before he crosses into Buffalo's Hook. Well, this is some really interesting information, and it's also a really beautiful view. So I'm going to stop right here and suggest that Bryan shows you the setting sun for a moment, and thereafter we'll get you another view of the leopard. But this is just too good. And as I was saying, look at that beautiful marula trees in the foreground and the leopard at the base of this marula tree here. Darren in Michigan, thank you very much. He's done some more research for us and found out that the reason why this young leopard is called Trouble is that he did get himself into trouble twice when he was a youngster, and he was actually chased by the Matimba males. There's another Fleming grimace. He was chased by the Matimba males up a tree twice. That was noted, and on one occasion he actually got scratches on his back leg, so he escaped with an inch of his life. If a male lion gets a hold of a young leopard, he is doomed. But luckily the razor sharp claws of the Matimbas just cut through his flesh and allowed him to continue scrambling up the tree to safety. Another Fleming grimace. Wouldn't it be wonderful to know which leopard scent marking here? It's possibly his mother, his sister, or Mvula. Those are the likely candidates who move through this area. But who knows, even Karula or Kunyuma could have scent marked on this very tree. And what you will find is leopards will be attracted to these kind of info centers, and they will all leave their message behind. So it's kind of like an internet cafe. They can move into these areas, acquire a lot of information about the general news, and then continue off to the next information center. And as you can see, there's a lot of information that's being processed. It's not that he just walks here and has one sniff and goes, oh, Mvula was here, and then walks off. He really is reading a lot into the smells, and it'll be interesting how much of a story they can read into from these scent marks. Now, I sadly wasn't able to clear up the exact spot pattern that this young leopard does have, but what I can say is that Roger in Wisconsin, it is always taken from right to left. So it's the right side of the muzzle first and then the left when calling the spot pattern, i.e. 2-3 or 3-2. It's always the right hand side first. And Roger was just double checking that there was an official protocol so that guides didn't get confused, and yes, there is indeed. I just want to move one last time and get you one more close-up of him before he crosses. It may not work out, but it's worth a try. Now, I've heard Brent on the radio, sadly, when he got to the area that Sandile was in, he was no longer there and he's still searching for him. So with a bit of luck, he will get to find him for you. And we'll get you one last shot of him disappearing. Well, Raisa, thank you very much for hearing my calls for help on the spot pattern, and she agrees it is difficult to distinguish which spots are which, but it sounds like she feels it's 3 on the right hand side, 2 small ones with one joined big one, and 4 on the left. I might be getting them mixed up here, with one very big one, which are 3 spots joined together. Apologies, I've got it the wrong way around. It's 4 on the right, so 4 on the right, 3 on the left, and there's one very big blob on each side of those markings with multiple joined freckles. And you can very faintly see his back between the green bushes now and his white tail flicking. But sadly, I think that will be the last we see of him for now. And the great thing about young male leopards is that they can all of a sudden just appear and set up a temporary home on your property while they wait to become dominant. And seeing as though Kunyuma and Quarantine evidently have disappeared, it would be great if he came and filled their space. Well, I've looked up hoping that the sun would still be up and we could show you a glimmer of it, but it is down and there's not much to see out on the western horizon. It's actually quite dull already, but we are going to continue on and see what we can find you in the next 25 minutes. Now, as I did say, we can't go here, and some of you may be wondering, why can't we go here? There's no fence. The leopard went, why can't we follow? And it's very important for these areas not to have too many vehicles driving around. And apologies to Bryn for pronouncing your name incorrectly as Bryan earlier. So, Bryn would like to know if young male leopards, brothers, will ever join up and team up together like lions and cheetahs will do. And no, they won't ever become an official team. They may share the odd kill from time to time, but that would typically be when they are very recently abandoned by their mothers, so kind of like what we're experiencing with Kunyuma and Quarantine now at about 2.5 to 3 years of age. I wouldn't be hugely surprised to see that happen, but they don't become an official team or coalition like cheetah or lion will do. So sadly, that is not something that you will get to see. But that's not to say that you may not see 2 brothers together even after they have become self-sufficient. good. Wonderful to see not a new leopard, but an unfamiliar leopard. And he really is beautiful. Of size, I think he is slightly smaller than Quarantine and Kunuma, and that could not only be attributed to genetics but also to age. I've got a feeling he is younger, and thank you very much, Raisa, for again trying to help us here in finding out the age. Raisa couldn't find anything confirmed in terms of age, but what I am going to do is I'm going to ask Jors on the radio, who was in that sighting earlier, who I called to let him know that one of his favorite leopards was around, and I think he'll be able to provide us with the age. The age of him. Thinking. Copy, thank you very much. And okay, copy that. That sounds good to me. Yours says he's pretty sure it's around 2 years old, possibly ever so slightly older than that. And I'm sure as time unfolds and we get to see more, we will find out more interesting information on that young male. But that kind of adds up to me. Aisa, I don't know what you think, but I think 2 years would be a safe estimate. But the beauty of the Sabi Sands is that we sometimes can very accurately know the age of these animals, which is very, very useful for us to further our knowledge on them in terms of times that they may be kicked out by their mother. Watch out, little Franklin. Okay, well, Bryan and I are probably going to stop and stretch our legs, possibly a rain dance, and you guys are going to head across to Brent for another wonderful sighting that he's got lined up for you.
So welcome back, everyone. Amazing you guys got to see a leopard I haven't seen yet. Makhombo, one of Nkanyanini's youngsters. I've seen his sister Shluva, but not him yet. And we are continuing on our giraffe streak this afternoon. And we saw 2 boys earlier, and now we are with a female. And you can notice there the tufts on the top of her horns, and that is indicating she's a female. The males have a much more robust and horns, and they're none of that hair growing on the top because they do use them for fighting. So the sun is set already, and we are with this giraffe female as she moves in the dusk. And you can see there where the name giraffe comes from as she started walking. It's from the Arabic word zarafa, the one who walks swiftly. And I know you've been with Scotty and a leopard, and believe it or not, in the naming, the scientific name of a giraffe, the leopard got a mention. So the Latin name of a giraffe, or part of it, is Cameleo pardus, and it's because it's tall like a camel and spotched like a leopard. There are very few animals out here in the bush that walk with a lateral gait, and a giraffe is one of them. So you'll watch the left side move simultaneously to the right side, and the right side moves simultaneously. The other one we see quite often is hyena, and Country Chick is asking why. Well, Country Chick, that's a very good question. It's more than likely to do with stamina and energy saving, is the only thing I can think of offhand. If anyone else out there knows anything about that, why they might possibly walk with that lateral gait. She's coming closer to have a look at us, it seems. Oh, no, she's just interested in the russet bush willow. Please let me know if you can think of anything else why they have a lateral gait, and you can do that. You can send us the answers to questions at wildearth.tv, or you can use the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. So when I first arrived here on Djuma, for the first couple of months, believe it or not, I actually think I had more leopard sightings than giraffe sightings. And I know some of you out there are big fans of giraffes, and Pinky Swear just mentioned that this is one of her favorite animals. So I hope you're enjoying this giraffe. You can see that long tongue wrapping around the branches and stripping those little leaves off that russet bush willow. We've got quite an interesting question. We're referring to it. We all know how tall a giraffe is. And Virginia on Twitter is wondering, do they have to get lowered to the ground during a thunderstorm? Well, Virginia, not to my knowledge. I've never seen them ducking down when there's thunder and lightning around. I think they probably work on the law of averages, that there's a taller tree that will be struck before them. Strangely enough, I've never actually heard of a giraffe being struck by lightning, but I actually have seen an animal struck by lightning, and it was in the Busanga Plains in northern Zambia. And there was a buffalo bull in the middle of this short grass plain with not a tree within kilometers, and while we were watching it, it got struck by lightning. So, and there was roast buffalo on the menu that night. No, I'm only kidding, but the lions did come feed off it the next day. She's definitely making a big meal out of that Combretum. I don't want to move because she is quite close to us. Don't want to put her off her dinner. So he's still listening and very attentive to everything around. Wonder what she can hear that we can't. See how those ears jump around and move around. That beautiful dusk sky behind her. Now, at the moment she's not feeding off a thorn tree, but quite often we do find giraffe feeding off thorn trees. And it's amazing how tough their mouths are, and they're able to handle large thorns. And their tongue, if you ever got to feel a giraffe's tongue, has sort of the consistency of an old leather boot. Well, as we were discussing the gait, as the giraffe decides to start walking off and using that gait, Donna's got quite a good explanation. So the parallel gait is used to stop the legs getting caught together and therefore the giraffe falling over. Thanks very much for that, Donna. That's really, really interesting information you've passed down there. So when we look at giraffes, most of the time they're such a wonderfully placid and calm animal, but on occasion they have been known to be aggressive, and Ruth in Costa Rica was wondering that. And Ruth, the only time I've seen giraffe really, really aggressive is defending themselves or their young against lions. And can you imagine a blow, a kick from one of those legs is enough to break a lion's jaw or even kill a lion outright? And it has happened before. And there has been some incredible footage caught over the years of lions hunting giraffe. And there's certain areas where they hunt giraffe quite regularly. And that is the only time I've seen a giraffe get aggressive towards another animal, and it's generally only with lions. I've never seen it with another animal. They can be quite curious with leopards and with cheetah. And even if you're a person, if you jump off the vehicle and you lie flat in the grass, a giraffe will often walk up and sort of look down at you just to see what you are and what you're up to. But never have I seen them outwardly aggressive towards other animals. We've seen elephants aggressive towards giraffe, we've seen elephants aggressive towards zebra, we've seen zebra aggressive, a lot of the other animals, but with giraffe, I've only ever seen it with lions before. She's disappearing. Where did she disappear to, Andrew? Off into the bush. Well, we're not going to bash off after her. We're going to let her move off peacefully. And it's been such a fantastic sunset safari. And Scotty has been shaking on an amazing trip with those ellies and then with a new leopard that we don't see very often. I'm not sure if we've ever seen him before on the live drives. And I'm sure quite a few of you are wondering about Sandile. I did go check the last area of Sandile, and unfortunately he had moved into a really thick Timbuti thicket on the drainage line, and we wouldn't go crashing in there, and it was getting a bit dark by the time I got there. Also, just to let you know, Timbuti trees are one of the slow growing trees and are very important around the edge of the drainage lines. They hold the soils together. So even if we had found them, we wouldn't have gone driving over those small Timbutis that are helping with the development of that drainage line. But I'm quite sure we will look for him in the morning. And we did have a really nice discussion thanks to a question from Stephanie in Switzerland about elephants and elephant body size. And fortunately, I have a little birdie in my ear who's updated me a bit more. So I was correct that the largest elephant ever recorded was from southern Angola, but I was incorrect about the time frame and the weight. It was shot in the 50s, I think, if I remember correctly now, 1956, and it was not 9 tons, it was 11 tons. And that makes me wonder, did that elephant have a form of elephantitis? I mean, to grow that large, that is an absolutely incredible, astounding size. If you think about a really big bull elephant in this area is about 7 tons. So almost, 5 tons on a really big Kruger elephant or a really big Tembe elephant. So that's really, really fascinating. And I'm definitely going to go home and do some more reading on that giant elephant from Angola and see if there's any possible explanation to why that particular animal was so massive. But as we draw to the end of this sunset safari, Andrew and I are going to hand you across to Scott and Bryan so they can say goodnight. We will leave you. We will be with you bright and early on the sunrise safari tomorrow. Remember, guys, from Friday we'll be changing times. We are going to be half an hour later on the sunset safaris and half an hour earlier on the sunrise safaris. So from the Jigger, have a wonderful evening or day wherever you might be in the world.
Welcome back, everyone, and what an awesome afternoon it's been for all of you. And as I was discussing this morning, often more so than us who are actually here, because you have the benefits of getting to see not what just one vehicle is seeing, but what 2 vehicles are seeing. And there's a lot of stuff that Brent found for you this afternoon that I'm sure you really enjoyed, and the giraffe is probably the highlight that he's finished off on, and he also found a few earlier. So well done to Brent, and also what great news and what a luck that Craig from Cheetah Plains managed to find that young male leopard Makhombo. He really is so pretty. Bryan was saying the same thing. Bryan was really happy. It was the first time he got to film him, and we had some wonderful views, as I'm sure you all agree. Well, like I say all the time, thank you so much for following the Safari Live show. Keep spreading the word and keep sending through your questions. I know I got a huge amount of help from all of you guys this evening, sending through various pieces of information, and we are incredibly grateful for that knowledge that you share with us, and then we can continue to share with all the other viewers. So it really is such a great concept, and thanks for your help. Thanks again to Bryan on camera and to Nikki and Tara in the final control. It's going to be Brent and James out tomorrow morning, and I'll be on tracking team hoping to find you some animals. Enjoy the view and the silence for the last few seconds. See you next time.